Joining me now is the senior editor-at-large at Newsweek, Josh Hammer. Josh, the relatives of the fallen troops from the controversial Afghanistan withdrawal, the botched withdrawal, have faced members of Congress. They slammed the Biden administration for the deaths they say were preventable and said calling the withdrawal a success is a ultimate sign of disrespect. There was a testimony that was just heartbreaking to watch, including this.
Our elected president entered the room. When he approached me, his words to me were, my wife Jill and I know how you feel. We lost our son as well and brought him home in a flag-draped coffin. My heart started beating faster, and I started shaking knowing that their son died from cancer and they were able to be by his side. Also wondering how someone could honestly, be so heartless to say he knew how I felt a little over 24 hours and learning of my son's death.
We all remember that footage of Biden looking at his watch as the dignified transfer ceremony. The families of the servicemen were rightly upset by that, and now we're getting an insight into just how disrespectful the president was to these grieving family members.
Well, Rita, first of all, my friends James Hassan and Jerry Dunleavy have a brand new book just out this month on the botched Afghanistan withdrawal. It's starting to get some publicity, so I would commend to your viewers who are interested in hearing more about this. James, who's a co-author there, actually served in Afghanistan in the military for about 4 years. So go ahead and check out that book. When it comes to this hearing here, look, the botched withdrawal from Afghanistan was one of the absolute nadirs, one of the absolute lowest of all low marks of the Biden presidency. And unfortunately, there was a very large sample size of data points to choose from for choosing that distinct dishonor. In fact, I thought that the withdrawal from Afghanistan was so bad that at the time I actually wrote a column saying that House Republicans should try to impeach Joe Biden, notwithstanding that the votes were not there. But I thought that the way that went down was beyond disgraceful. I mean, beyond really any kind of adjectives that can come to mind there. I mean, those images are really pretty seared in my head, frankly. I mean, the military convoy planes taking off from Kabul airport with people hanging on, falling off, the evacuation of the U.S. embassy, similar to Saigon towards the end of the Vietnam War, and of course, the embassy turning over into Taliban hands just a matter of days later. I say all that, by the way, as someone who actually supported, as a public policy matter, the withdrawal from Afghanistan for years and years because the U.S. simply did not have a mission in that country anymore. But surely it could have been planned a heck of a lot better and executed a heck of a lot better than this. These stories are just gut-wrenching. I mean, I'm not really sure how else to say it. I mean, like, just watching that right now, I'm almost moved to tears here on camera with you. I mean, it's just horrible, horrible stuff. And Joe Biden has a very long and inglorious history of clumsily trying to empathize with people because of the various tragedies that he has been through. There was the infamous tragic car crash right around the time that he was first elected to the Senate and all of that. But man, I mean, clumsy is really just the way to say it. He thinks that he's better at doing this than he is, and ultimately just makes him that disconnected from reality.
But this lie that he keeps repeating about the manner in which his son died and where he died and what he died from, it's one thing to be lying about it at a campaign rally. I think that's bad enough. But when you're talking to a family member of a fallen soldier who's just found out hours earlier that they've lost their loved one, and you come out with that, I mean, it is just beyond belief. Now, moving on to that story, and I'm sure we'll hear a lot more because it's just happening as we're speaking, that testimony. You've written a piece called Jack Smith's Sham Indictment Shows Biden Regime Wants to Face Trump. In it, you explain why the Biden administration wants a rematch against Donald Trump. I've got to say, Josh, many say these politically motivated indictments are in fact an attempt to keep Trump off the ballot in 2024. Tell me why you disagree.
So I see the arguments both ways. Obviously, I have chosen which way I ultimately find more compelling. If you look at the public polling in the Republican presidential primary, Rita, in late February going into March, Ron DeSantis was not a candidate yet, but at that time, the polling between a hypothetical DeSantis, Trump, and the rest of the field matchup was basically neck and neck. A lot of the polling at the time was within 5 percentage points or so. Trump really did not start to pull away to anywhere close to where he is now until after the first indictment, until that Alvin Bragg indictment in New York City dropped. And then after the second Jack Smith indictment with the classified document scandal at Mar-a-Lago, that lead only got bigger and bigger. So to me, at this point, the data is fairly clear. The data are clear that Republican voters, each and every time that there is some terrible news where the Biden regime is unjustly persecuting Trump, and I'm not, to be clear, I am not downplaying that. It is absolutely an unjust political persecution. But every time that they go ahead and whip out some new developments, Trump standing in the polls just goes up and up. In fact, I was reading a newsletter just earlier today, and they pointed out that I think it was either Trump or someone in his inner circle. I can't quite recall, but it was someone from inner circle Mar-a-Lago. They literally said that, like, one more indictment and we'll seal the GOP nomination. I mean, they're basically counting on it at this point, and it's kind of the world's worst kept secret at this point too. So that is my read on it, and the polling tends to back that up. If you look at Joe Biden versus Donald Trump in a lot of these swing states, it's very close. Biden is usually leading Trump by a few points in states like Arizona, Pennsylvania, Georgia, some of our swing states. Sometimes he's not, but sometimes he is. Whereas DeSantis tends to poll a lot better versus Joe Biden. He's been up by, I think, 5 to 7 points in Arizona, states like that. He's well ahead in Georgia. So the polling that we have all seen so far does indicate that Donald Trump would be the best person for Joe Biden to try to face next year. He obviously has defeated Donald Trump in 2020. It was a contested election. It was not exactly a smooth election with myriad flaws, but he is the guy sitting in the White House. And I genuinely do think that he and his Department of Justice want to face Donald Trump again. I really do.
Well, it might be California Governor Gavin Newsom facing Donald Trump, or Ron DeSantis. He's been talked up as a presidential candidate, maybe not 2024, but down the track, maybe 2024. But there's been talk of a debate with Florida Governor DeSantis and Newsom. But Newsom saying that proposed rules for this debate are an attempt to hide DeSantis's weaknesses as a candidate. But I don't know, I've had a look at this, Josh, and all DeSantis wants is a 50-50 audience there. So what is Newsom's problem with these rules?
I honestly have no idea. I wish I had a good answer for this. I mean, there basically seem to be 2 points of disagreement that Gavin Newsom is objecting to. The first one is exactly what you said. He apparently does not want a live audience. And the other is that he objects to the DeSantis camp's proposal, their suggestion, instead of opening statements, to kind of roll out kind of a 2-minute hype campaign style video of sorts. So when it comes to the live audience, I genuinely do not understand what he is afraid of here. I mean, the viewers just saw it right there. I mean, DeSantis is proposing that the room be split 50-50. I mean, he's not proposing that this be like a 90-10 stacked, one-sided partisan audience. Now, maybe you might envision a world in which Gavin Newsom objects to Sean Hannity, who obviously is a conservative commentator here in the U.S. You might envision a world where Gavin Newsom is maybe objecting to that, but he's not. He apparently has no problem with Sean Hannity moderating it. In fact, he already did a very high-profile event himself with Sean Hannity. So I don't understand what in the world is his issue when it comes to the audience. The opening statement versus a campaign-style hype video, I mean, look, not a big deal, honestly. Look, Ron DeSantis is currently running for president of the United States. Maybe he wants to give, like, his well-polished video team kind of more of an opportunity to throw out a video. It could be something as simple or straightforward as that. I think that ultimately, Rita, that these two will find a way to get the debate on. It seems like they both want it more than they do not want it. So I find that they're probably not going to come up with some sort of cop-out excuse to avoid it. And I very much look forward to it. It's going to be a great debate between the blue state model, California being the quintessential blue state in America right now, and the red state model, Florida, which is, in my opinion, I'm biased because I live here, but I think it has eclipsed Texas, my former state. I think it has eclipsed Texas as kind of the nation's iconic and leading red state. So it's going to be a great clash. It's going to be a great contestation of ideas and two big personalities, and I can't wait for it personally.
Josh, you are so right. This is the clear ideological blue state v red state fight. And the stats are pretty clear here. The Californians are the ones fleeing to Florida, not the other way around. So Gavin Newsom's going to have some trouble explaining just why that phenomenon is happening and why his policies aren't responsible for it. Now, Josh, we saw some crazy scenes out of another blue state, New York, and one of the bluest cities, New York City. The anarchy, the violence, the attacks against the police. I mean, these scenes are not what you expect to see in a civilized city.
Unfortunately, Rita, this is actually increasingly what I and I think many others have come to expect from Soros prosecutor-backed Democratic Party-governed cities in America. In fact, it was only a few months ago where there were very similar images out of Chicago. It was around the time of the mayoral runoff there in Chicago. Lori Lightfoot is out, and there were these horrible images of people just openly vandalizing and looting stores. It really makes my blood boil, honestly. I mean, there are a few issues out there that really viscerally get my blood pressure like through the roof than watching scenes like this, than watching this open flouting of the rule of law, this desecration of law and order, watching cops stand down because they feel like they cannot take action because they might be prosecuted or they might be sued for monetary damages. It's horrible. I mean, with scenes like this, if you are an entrepreneur, why would you ever feel incentivized to try to kind of save up capital, get a loan from a bank, get your business going up, if your business is just possibly liable or could potentially one day just be looted and vandalized by these street thugs? I mean, without basic respect for the moral imperative of the rule of law, nothing in society ultimately matters. It really does all come back to this. And like I said, I mean, in so many of these Soros prosecutor cities in particular, Chicago, New York City, St. Louis, Los Angeles, San Francisco, tragically, I think the number is roughly 20%. Roughly 1 in 5 Americans currently live in a jurisdiction where there is a George Soros-backed prosecutor because he has many of the biggest cities, like I just mentioned there. That is a galling statistic. It's actually why my friend Will Scharf and I recently found that a group called Jews Against Soros were trying to kind of push back against this ridiculous notion that to criticize George Soros is somehow anti-Semitic. It is not. He is an evil man. He should be called out for it because the more George Soros you get and the more George Soros-funded prosecutors you get, the more scenes like this you will have.
You are so right. I had no idea about that statistic. 1 in 5 Americans are living in jurisdictions under George Soros-backed DAs. That is not happy news. That is just sinister. The influence this single man has on the justice system. Josh Hammer, thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks, Rita.